So today we're going to be choosing which one of our plant resource pictures from our plant scavenger hunt that we would like to use for our major project. So what I'd like for you to do is open up those images and you're going to look through them and find one that's your favorite and find one that you think has an interesting composition and looks like it's a nice single layer of plant foliage. You don't want anything that's too simplistic, but also not too complex either. So I'm looking for one that uses the composition space really well and is really interesting. Now I think I know which one I'd like to use, and once I decide, I'm going to download that photograph. Once that image is downloaded, I'm going to open a new tab and go to pixlr.com, P-I-X-L-R, and select the Pixlr X version. When I get to this step, I'm going to open an image and navigate to my downloads and open that downloaded picture. And then it'll ask you to click Apply to open your image. Now once you have your picture opened, on the left-hand side, select the crop feature, and you're going to turn on the select aspect ratio. Now here you have the width and the height. If you want your picture to be vertically oriented, you're going to change it to 3:4, but if you want it horizontally oriented, you'll change it to 4:3. And so now if you need to crop your image at all, you can drag from the corners. Make sure you don't drag from the sides because that will adjust your ratio, but if you need to crop anything out, you can move it from the corners. For example, I think I want to remove a little bit of the right edge because there's a tiny bit of a shadow that I don't like. So once you adjust that and then you can move that adjustment around, you're going to click Apply. And then you're going to navigate over to the left again and move down to the Adjust button. And here you're going to click two things: Auto Fix to automatically correct your image, and then turn on the black and white feature for your picture. This part's really important in order for the next step to work. And then next, go down one spot below that to the Filter section and scroll down until you see the Posterize filter and adjust it to 1. That's going to take your image and convert it to just a flat black and white picture. Now once you have this, you are going to click Apply and save your image. So click Save in the lower right hand side, and this will allow you to save it. You can type the name, whatever you'd like for it to be called, and leave all of the other presets to exactly what it's got, and then download. Once you have your image downloaded, you can close out of that Pixlr X, and you're going to open a new tab and go to griddrawingtool.com. And you're going to hit this green Start button and choose a file to upload. Navigate to your newly edited picture under your Downloads tab and open that one up for editing. Now we shouldn't need to complete step 2, step 3, or step 4, so skip straight ahead to step 5 where we can edit and create the grid. And now you're going to change the top to 4 boxes wide, and then you can change the color to whatever you would like and whatever shows up well, and you can also adjust the pixels to 1 or 2 pixels and see how that looks. Click Apply, and if you think that works great, then you're good. I think that 1 pixel wide is a little too small, so I'm going to change it back to 2. But just click Apply Grid each time you make any adjustments and make sure it looks the way that you want it to look. Once you're happy with your grid, you can click Download on that file, and it's going to save that file to your computer under the Downloads tab. Now if you open up your files on your computer, you should be able to see this as an Art Tutor grid picture, and if you open it up, you can see now that we have the grid applied. It should be 4 squares in one direction and 5.5 squares in the other direction. Now for part of today's assignment, upload this picture to the Google Classroom assignment, and you may also want to email this to yourself or upload it to your Google Drive. So now that you have your resource picture gridded for this project, we are next going to move on to gridding our paper. And for this is very important. We are not going to draw directly on our collage board yet. We're going to be creating our drawing, our grid drawing, on a separate piece of paper, and then later on I'll show you how to transfer it to our collage board. So I have pulled an extra piece of paper that I had left over from my mixed media sketchbook, and I've just ripped one page out. This is 12 by 9. You can use one of those pages, or if you don't have any more of those, you can also use a standard piece of printer paper that's 8.5 by 11. It's a little bit smaller, but it's actually the same size as our board. The 9 by 12 is just a little bit bigger. So, but it'll all work the same way. So if you would, you're gonna start by turning your paper and where I can see the top corner, and I'm gonna work from this corner and work my way across. So if you take your ruler, make sure you start on the 0, and I'm gonna line that up right against the left edge and line my ruler right across there. Now we're gonna create a 2-inch grid. So starting at 0, every 2 inches I'm gonna make a tick mark. So at the 2, and just a little vertical mark right at that line. At the 4, 6, 8, and 10. So that gives me 5 sections. Now, since our resource picture is 5.5 squares tall, we're gonna add 1 inch to make a half square here. So I'm gonna make a tick mark at the 11. And then anything past 11 is gonna be the extra that we're gonna cut off. But if you're working on the smaller printer paper, that 11 should be the end of your paper. So again, here are the markings where you should have a tick mark. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and 11. Now, without rotating the paper at all, I want you to slide your ruler down to the bottom of the page, near that bottom edge, and line it up on your 0 again. And we're gonna make those same marks a second time. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and 11. And remember, that 11 is gonna be that half square. It's very important that you don't rotate your paper or you'll get all of your lines off because you're gonna flip it. So just remember, you wanna slide from the top down to the bottom. Now that these lines are matched up and I can see my top tick mark and I can see my bottom tick mark, I am going to connect those with pencil. Now this does not necessarily have to be super light since this is not our final piece of paper, but I'm gonna bring that line all the way across to connect those. Normally, if we're working on our final paper, I would say make sure that this is super, super light, that way we can erase it. But since this isn't our final paper, it's okay if these lines are a little bit darker and heavier. Now, if you're using printer paper, you shouldn't have to make this very last line because it is the edge of your paper. But if you're using the larger sketchbook paper like me, it should look like this. Now, anything past the 11-inch mark, this last inch, I'm gonna put a squiggle through because that's gonna be the extra that I'm gonna cut off later. Once I have that finished, I'm gonna turn my paper this way, and now we're gonna measure across the short edge of the paper. So I'm just gonna line my ruler up again, right across this top edge, and make sure I start at the 0. And this time I'm gonna make a tick mark every 2 inches on the 2, 4, 6, and 8. Now, the only difference between our resource picture and our final collage. The grid is just a tiny bit off for the 8.5 on that final piece of paper. Our resource picture is only 4 squares wide, so we're gonna have to do a little bit of creative thinking later to sort of fill that in. But for right now, what I want you to do, just to make it the full size of the paper, we're gonna make a tick mark at the 8.5 inch marker. Now, I'm gonna slide down to the bottom, line my ruler up on the 0 along the left-hand side, and do the same thing again. 2, 4, 6, 8, 8.5. Now that we have those at the top and the bottom, we're going to connect them together. Now you can see that down here, past this little 1/2 inch row, I've got some extra space, so I'm gonna squiggle all that out because that's the extra that I don't need. And your grid should look like this. You should have 5.5 squares and 4 and just a little smidge extra. Now you're gonna take scissors and cut this out. Now my piece of paper should look like this, and you should be able to place it over top of your collage, and those two pieces should be the same size. So eventually what will happen is we're going to draw our image here, and then later on we're going to be cutting it out, taking the cutout portion, laying it on our collage, transferring it, and then we'll be working directly onto this surface to paint it. So that is what it should look like. Now for grading today, what I'd like for you to do is lay your paper down on a surface, and I want you to take your ruler and you're going to take 2 different pictures. The first picture I'd like for you to take is to line your ruler up along the short edge where it starts at 0 and goes down to the 8.5, and take a picture of that portion of your page. And then I want you to take another picture. If you take your ruler at the bottom of the page, line it up at the 0 where I can see it come all the way across to your 11 inch marker, and then take a photo of that. That is going to help me see if you have drawn your grid correctly and accurately before we move on to the next step.